Well, hello there. My aunt complaining about her relationship with her son, and my niece bluntly declares that it's entirely her fault. Can you just picture how tense the atmosphere in that moment would be? Was our main character out of line? Listen to the whole story to find out what led to that statement and the reaction that followed. Hit like and share if you're also curious to know the outcome and see who was right and who was wrong.
The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Carter's auto shop, a weathered brick building on the edge of Bristol, Virginia, where the air smelled of motor oil and hot metal. The garage hummed with the clatter of wrenches and the low rumble of an engine being tested its faded sign, Family Business. Since 1995, a proud marker of 3 decades of hard work. Inside, Maggie Carter, 55, stood under a lifted Chevy, her grease-streaked hands deftly tightening a bolt. Her short silver-streaked hair was tucked under a bandana, her sharp blue eyes scanning the undercarriage with the precision of someone who'd built this place from nothing. Maggie was a force, a mechanic who'd defied expectations to open her shop 30 years ago, but her brusque demeanor often left little room for warmth even with those closest to her. Her son Jake had once been her shadow, trailing her through the shop since he could walk his small hands clutching a toy wrench. At 26, Jake was no longer that boy, but until a few months ago, he'd been the heart of the garage, working the longest hours, soothing clients Maggie's bluntness had ruffled, ensuring every tool was in its place. Now his absence was a gaping hole felt in the cluttered workbench and the unanswered calls Maggie left on his phone. The shop, once a symbol of family, felt hollow without him, and Maggie's frustration simmered directed at anyone within reach. Sam Carter. Maggie's nephew and a mechanic at the shop leaned against a toolbox, wiping sweat from his brow. At 30, Sam was lean and steady, his dark hair cropped short, his brown eyes sharp with a mix of loyalty and exasperation. He'd worked for Maggie since his early 20s, drawn by her promise of a family business he could be part of. But today, as Maggie barked orders over the din of the garage, Sam's patience was thin. Ellie, another cousin, was at the front desk, her gentle voice calming a client on the phone. At 28, Ellie was the shop's peacemaker, her warm smile and auburn ponytail a contrast to Maggie's intensity. The final piece of the crew was Dylan Hayes, 30, a skilled mechanic Maggie had taken under her wing, treating him like the son she seemed to have forgotten in Jake. The day was winding down the last customer's car ready for pickup when Maggie's frustration boiled over. She slammed a wrench onto the workbench, her voice cutting through the shop. "This place is a mess," she snapped. "No one's stepping up since Jake left. Sam, Ellie, you two need to pull your weight or we're going to lose clients." Sam's jaw tightened, his hands pausing on the rag he was using to clean his tools. "Maggie?" He said, his voice low but firm. "We're doing everything we can. But you know why Jake's gone. You can't keep pretending it's our fault." Maggie's eyes narrowed, her hands on her hips. "Don't start with me, Sam," she said. "Jake made his choice. He walked out, left the family high and dry. And now I'm stuck cleaning up the mess." Ellie glanced up from the desk, her expression uneasy, but Sam didn't back down. "He didn't just walk out," he said, stepping closer. "You pushed him out, Maggie. All that talk about this being a family business, a legacy, and then you chose Dylan to take over when you stepped down. Jake worked his ass off for you, and you made him feel like he didn't matter." The garage fell silent, the other mechanics, Dylan included, pausing their work. Dylan, his blonde hair streaked with grease, looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between Maggie and Sam. Maggie's face reddened, her voice sharp. "That's enough," she said. "This is my shop, my decision. Dylan's got the drive, the vision. Jake's good, but he's not ready to lead. And you, Sam, need to mind your own business." Sam shook his head, his voice steady, but laced with anger. "It's not just your shop, Maggie. You called it a family business. Jake's your son, and you broke his heart. Don't blame us because you're feeling it now." Ellie stepped forward, her voice soft but urgent. "Sam, Maggie, let's not do this here," she said, glancing at the other workers. "We're all family. We can work this out." But Maggie's expression hardened, and she turned away, grabbing a clipboard. "There's nothing to work out," she said. "Jake wants to throw a tantrum that's on him. I've got a business to run." She stalked to the office, the door slamming behind her, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. Sam exhaled, running a hand through his hair, and Dylan approached, his voice low. "I didn't ask for this." "Sam," he said, "I didn't know she was planning to hand me the shop." Sam nodded, his anger softening. "I know, Dylan. But Jake didn't deserve to be sidelined. He was the soul of this place." Ellie joined them, her eyes worried. "Maggie's hurting," she said. "She won't admit it, but she misses Jake. She's just too stubborn to say it." Outside, the Bristol sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, the garage's neon sign flickering to life. Sam lingered by the open bay door, his thoughts on Jake, who was now working at a rival shop across town. He'd seen the pain in Jake's eyes the day he quit the betrayal, when Maggie announced Dylan as her successor. Sam had tried to talk to Maggie months ago, warning her that favoring Dylan was driving Jake away, but she'd brushed him off. Now, with the shop faltering and Maggie's calls to Jake going unanswered, the cracks in the family were undeniable. Inside the office, Maggie sat at her cluttered desk, staring at a framed photo of her and Jake taken when he was 10, both grinning under the shop's sign. Her chest ached, a mix of anger and regret she couldn't name. She'd built this garage with her own hands, poured her life into it, called it a legacy for Jake. But somewhere along the way, she'd lost him not just as a worker, but as a son. She picked up her phone, dialing his number again, but it went to voicemail. His familiar voice, a knife in her heart. "Jake," she whispered, but the words wouldn't come. Sam watched her through the office window, his resolve hardening. Maggie's stubbornness had fractured the family, but he wouldn't let it break them. The garage was more than a business. It was a bond forged in sweat and love, and it was worth fighting for. As the last light faded, Sam knew the days ahead would test them all. But the question lingered. Could Maggie face her mistakes, or would the family garage become a monument to what they'd lost? The Bristol dawn broke gray and heavy, the air thick with the promise of rain as Carter's auto shop opened its doors. The garage, once a bustling hub of laughter and clanging tools, now felt like a machine running on fumes. Its rhythm disrupted since Jake Carter's departure 3 months ago. Maggie Carter, at 55, moved through the shop with her usual grit, her grease-stained hands wrenching a stubborn bolt from a Ford's engine. But her sharp blue eyes, usually laser-focused, darted to the empty workbench where Jake used to stand. His absence a silent accusation she couldn't shake. The shop's neon sign flickered outside, its glow dimmed by the overcast sky, mirroring the strain within the family business Maggie had built over 30 years. Sam Carter, her nephew, was already at work, his lean frame bent over a Dodge's hood, his brow furrowed, not just from the task, but from the tension that had settled over the garage. At 30, Sam was loyal to Maggie, but her refusal to acknowledge her role in Jake's exit gnawed at him. Ellie, their cousin, was at the front desk, her auburn ponytail swaying as she juggled invoices and client calls, her gentle voice a balm against Maggie's sharp edges. Dylan Hayes, the mechanic Maggie had mentored like a son, worked quietly in the corner, his blonde hair tucked under a cap, his focus on a transmission repair. At 30, Dylan was skilled and driven, but the weight of being Maggie's chosen successor hung over him, an honor he hadn't sought but couldn't escape. The morning dragged, marked by small frustrations, a misplaced tool, a delayed parts delivery that Jake's presence once smoothed over. Maggie's temper flared when a client called complaining about a missed deadline. "Sam, where's that alternator for the Jenkins truck?" She barked, her voice echoing through the shop. Sam straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's on order, Maggie. I told you yesterday. We're stretched thin without Jake." Maggie's jaw tightened, her bandana slipping as she ran a hand through her silver-streaked hair. "Don't give me excuses," she snapped. "We've got a business to run." Jake chose to walk out. Sam's patience, already frayed, snapped. "He didn't choose to walk out," he said, his voice low but sharp. "You chose Dylan over him, Maggie. You told him the shop was his legacy, then handed it to someone else. What did you expect?" Ellie glanced up, her eyes wide, and Dylan paused, his wrench still in hand. Maggie's face reddened, but before she could respond, a customer entered, forcing them to swallow the argument. The tension lingered, a fault line ready to crack. That afternoon, Sam drove across town to check on Jake, who now worked at Bristol Speed and Repair, a sleek new garage with polished floors and a younger crew. Jake was under a vintage Mustang, his dark hair matted with sweat, his hands steady as he adjusted a carburetor. At 26, he was still the same diligent worker, but his easy grin was gone, replaced by a guarded edge. Sam leaned against the car, his voice casual but probing. "How's it going over here, man?" Jake slid out, wiping his hands. "It's fine," he said, his tone clipped. "Good crew, steady work. I'm not looking back." Sam nodded, but he saw the pain in Jake's eyes. The same hurt he'd seen the day Jake quit. "Maggie's struggling," he said carefully. "Shop's a mess without you. She won't say it, but she knows it." Jake's jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the floor. "She made her choice, Sam," he said. "All those years, I gave everything to that place. Stayed late, fixed her mistakes with clients, kept it running. And she picks Dylan. Says it's a business decision. It's bullshit." Sam sighed, his heart heavy. "I know," he said. "But she's hurting too. Keeps calling you, doesn't she?" Jake shrugged, his voice bitter. "She can call all she wants. I'm done." Back at Carter's auto shop, Maggie buried herself in work, but the cracks were showing. A client canceled a big job, citing delays, and Maggie's attempts to cover Jake's role, staying late managing inventory, left her exhausted. She snapped at Ellie for a minor error on an invoice, then retreated to her office, slamming the door. Ellie followed, her voice soft but firm. "Maggie, you can't keep doing this," she said, standing in the doorway. "You're pushing everyone away. Jake's not coming back unless you talk to him. Really talk." Maggie glared, her hands gripping a coffee mug. "He's the one who left Ellie," she said. "I gave him a job, a future." "What more did he want?" Ellie's eyes softened, but her words were pointed. "He wanted you to see him," she said. "Not just as a worker, but as your son. You chose Dylan to lead, and it broke him." Maggie's expression faltered, but she turned away, her voice gruff. "Dylan's got what it takes. Jake's too soft for this." Ellie shook her head, leaving Maggie alone with her thoughts, the photo of her and a young Jake on the desk, staring back like a rebuke. The next day, Dylan approached Maggie, his discomfort evident. "Maggie, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low, as they worked on a Jeep together. She nodded, her focus on the engine. "I didn't know you were planning to hand me the shop," Dylan said. "I'm grateful, but it's not right if it means losing Jake. He's family. Maybe you should talk to him." Maggie's hands paused, her voice sharp. "This isn't your call, Dylan," she said. "Jake's got a job here if he wants it. I made the best choice for the business." Dylan frowned but nodded, sensing her walls were still up. Meanwhile, Sam and Ellie hatched a plan to bridge the gap. While cleaning the shop's storage room, Ellie found an old notebook Maggie had kept filled with notes about Jake's early days in the garage. His first oil change at 10, his pride in fixing a radiator at 16. "Look at this," Ellie said, showing Sam. She was so proud of him. She just forgot how to show it. Sam's eyes lit up. "We need to get her to read this," he said. "Maybe it'll remind her what she's losing." They left the notebook on Maggie's desk, hoping it would spark something. The tension escalated when a major client, a local dealership, brought in a fleet of cars with a tight deadline. Without Jake's efficiency, the shop struggled. Parts were late, schedules clashed, and Maggie's stress boiled over. During a staff meeting, She lashed out, blaming Sam and Ellie for slacking. Sam, fed up, stood his ground. "We're not the problem, Maggie," he said, his voice ringing through the shop. "Jake kept this place together and you drove him away. You called this a family business, but you treated your own son like he was disposable." Maggie's face paled, but she doubled down. "I did what was best for the shop," she said. Jake didn't have the spine to lead. Dylan, unable to stay silent, spoke up. "Maggie, Jake's the best mechanic here," he said. "He's got the heart for this place. I don't want to take his spot if it means tearing your family apart." The room fell quiet, Maggie's eyes flickering with doubt for the first time. Before she could respond, a call came in. The dealership was threatening to pull the contract if the work wasn't done on time. Maggie's shoulders sagged, the weight of her choices pressing down. That evening, Sam drove to Jake's new garage, finding him working late on a classic Corvette. "Maggie's drowning Jake," Sam said, leaning against the car. "The shop's falling apart and she knows it's because you're gone. But she's too stubborn to admit it." Jake's hands stilled, his voice low. "She chose Dylan Sam." "What am I supposed to do, beg for my place?" Back Sam shook his head. "No. But maybe you give her a chance to make it right. For you, for the family." Jake didn't respond, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of longing for the shop, for his mother. The next day, Maggie found the notebook on her desk, its pages open to a note about Jake's first day as a full-time mechanic. "He's got my fire." She'd written her pride evident in every word. Her throat tightened, memories flooding back: Jake's laughter, his steady hands, his quiet strength. She dialed his number again, her voice trembling as she left a message. "Jake, I need to talk. Please." But the silence that followed was deafening, and Maggie knew the shop and her family were on the brink. The dealership's deadline loomed, and without Jake, failure was certain. The question was whether Maggie could swallow her pride or if the family garage would crumble under the weight of her mistakes. The Bristol sky hung low and heavy, the threat of rain mirroring the storm brewing inside Carter's auto shop. Maggie Carter stood in the garage's open bay, her hands stained with grease, her sharp blue eyes scanning the chaos around her. The dealership's fleet of cars, a high-stakes job with a ticking deadline, crowded the shop, their engines silent under the weight of delays. Without Jake, the shop's rhythm was gone. Tools were misplaced, schedules slipped, and Maggie's fraying patience couldn't fill the void her son had left. At 55, she'd built this garage with her own hands, called it a family legacy. But now, as the neon sign flickered outside, that legacy felt like a crumbling monument to her mistakes. Sam Carter, her nephew, worked on a sedan's brakes, his jaw tight with frustration. Ellie, their cousin, juggled calls at the front desk, her gentle voice strained as she placated an impatient client. Dylan Hayes, Maggie's chosen successor, was under a van, his focus unwavering, despite the tension that had simmered since Jake's departure. The shop was a powder keg, and the dealership's deadline was the spark. Maggie's voice cut through the noise, sharp and desperate. "Sam, where's that radiator for the F-150? We're running out of time." Sam straightened, his brown eyes flashing. "It's coming tomorrow, Maggie. I told you we can't do this without Jake." Maggie's face reddened, her bandana slipping as she snapped, "We don't have Jake, so step up." But her words lacked conviction, her gaze flickering to the empty workbench where Jake's tools once lay. Sam shook his head, his voice low but firm. "You need to stop pretending you can do this alone, Maggie. Jake was the glue here, and you pushed him out. Call him. Now." Ellie paused mid-call, her eyes pleading, and Dylan slid out from under the van, his expression uneasy. "He's right, Maggie," Dylan said, his voice steady. "Jake's the best we've got. I can't replace him. Not like this." Maggie's hands clenched the notebook she'd found on her desk, filled with her own proud notes about Jake's early days burning in her memory. She'd read it late last night, her throat tight as she traced the words. "He's got my fire." The truth was undeniable. She'd chosen Dylan for his drive, his mirror of her own ambition. thinking it would spare Jake the burden of leadership. But in doing so, she'd broken his heart, and the shop and her family was paying the price. The dealership's manager called, threatening to pull the contract, and Maggie's resolve cracked. "Fine," she said, her voice hoarse. "I'll talk to him." Sam and Ellie exchanged a glance, hope flickering, and Sam handed her his phone. "Go see him, Maggie," he said. Not a call. Face to face. "He's at Bristol Speed and Repair." Maggie hesitated, her pride warring with her fear, but the weight of the notebook of Jake's absence pushed her forward. She grabbed her keys, her voice barely a whisper. "Hold the fort," she said, and left the garage's hum fading behind her. At Bristol Speed and Repair, Jake Carter was under a classic Corvette, his hands steady as he adjusted a fuel line. At 26, he was thriving in the new shop, his skill earning respect, but the ache of his mother's betrayal lingered. The sleek garage, with its polished floors and modern tools, was a fresh start, but it wasn't home, not like Carter's auto shop, where he'd grown up under Maggie's watchful eye. The roar of a pickup pulling into the lot broke his focus, and when he slid out, he froze. Maggie stood there, her bandana gone, her silver-streaked hair, loose, her face etched with a vulnerability he hadn't seen in years. "Jake," she said, her voice cracking, "we need to talk." Jake stood wiping his hands on a rag, his dark eyes guarded. "I'm working, Mom," he said, his tone flat. "What do you want?" Maggie's hands fidgeted, her usual bravado gone. "The shop's falling apart," she said. "The dealership job's on the line, and I need you. We need you." Jake's jaw tightened, his hurt rising. "You didn't need me when you picked Dylan," he said. "You said it was a business decision. That I'd still have a job. Like I was just another worker, not your son." Maggie flinched, her eyes glistening. "I was wrong." She said the words raw and unfamiliar. "I thought Dylan could handle the pressure, that it would protect you. But I didn't see how much you gave to that shop, how much you gave to me. I'm sorry, Jake. I should have told you every day how proud I am." Jake's breath caught, his anger wavering under the weight of her apology. "You called it a family business," he said, his voice breaking. "A legacy. And then you gave it to him. Do you know how that felt?" Maggie stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I know," she said, "and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right if you'll let me. Come back, Jake, not just for the job, but for us. I can't do this without you." The garage was quiet, the other mechanics watching from a distance, and Jake's eyes searched his mother's, seeing the truth in her regret. He nodded, his voice low. "I'll help with the dealership job," he said. "But we're not done talking." Maggie's shoulders sagged with relief, a tear slipping down her cheek. "That's enough for now," she whispered. Back at Carter's auto shop, Jake's return was a spark that reignited the crew. He slipped into his old rhythm, organizing the workflow, calming the dealership's manager with his easy charm. Sam clapped him on the shoulder, grinning, and Ellie's eyes shone with gratitude. Dylan approached, his hand extended. "I don't want to take your place, Jake," he said. "Let's do this together." Jake hesitated, then shook his hand, a tentative truce forming. Maggie watched from the office, her heart swelling, the notebook open on her desk. The team worked through the night, the garage alive with the clatter of tools and the hum of engines. By dawn, the fleet was ready. The dealership's manager impressed, the contract saved. Exhausted but triumphant, the crew gathered in the shop, coffee mugs in hand, the neon sign glowing steadily outside. Maggie stepped forward, her voice steady but warm. "We did it," she said. "But I almost lost more than a job. Jake, I'm sorry for not seeing you, for not listening. This shop's a family business, and that starts with us." She turned to Dylan, her eyes softening. "You're part of this family too, Dylan. We'll figure out the future together." Jake nodded, his hurt not gone but eased, and Sam raised his mug. "To the family garage," he said, and the crew echoed their voices, mingling with the morning light. Ellie smiled, her peacemaking complete, and Dylan stood beside Jake, their partnership a new foundation. Maggie grasped Jake's hand, her grip firm, a promise to do better. Days later, the shop hummed with its old rhythm, Jake and Maggie working side by side on a vintage Chevy, their laughter echoing as they debated torque settings. Sam watched from the bay door, the Bristol sun warm on his face, and thought of the notebook of the fire Maggie had seen in Jake all those years ago. In his mind, a quiet voice spoke clear and true. A family business isn't just about the work, it's about the people who keep it running and the love that keeps them together.